By the end of 1943, the war in the Pacific is changing a lot. Japanese growth has clearly stopped as General Douglas MacArthur's South Pacific area guards the paths to Australia and takes Japanese land in the Solomon Islands. At the same time, after the fights at Midway and Coral Sea, much bigger U.S. Navy groups no longer chase Japanese ships in a hide-and-seek way, but move to big, ongoing attack plans. The Japanese switched to defense and set up a country defense area across the Pacific. Its outside parts hold on so-called unsinkable aircraft carriers, groups of islands and ring reefs like the Marshall, Caroline, and Gilbert Islands that give linked air protection. If U.S. troops attack them, island guards will tire out attackers and open the chance for air and sea counterattacks from Japanese spots at Rabaul and Truk. U.S. leaders like Chester Nimitz and Ernest King also see that these island groups, many with runways and good spots to anchor, can work as steps toward Japan. The Joint Chiefs of Staff talk about the plan, with MacArthur saying it would pull supplies from his South Pacific move. Still, at the January 1943 Casablanca meeting, the Allies pick a Central Pacific fight led by Admiral Raymond Spruance. Jumping from island to island is dangerous. Nimitz wants to skip non-key Japanese-held islands, which might risk U.S. supply lines. Plus, taking islands means many sea-to-land attacks against ready spots may be the hardest part of modern war. The U.S. Marines have a sea-to-land teaching, but by 1943, most landings have been mostly without fight. People also make planning hard. Admiral Kelly Turner and Marine General Holland Smith lead the sea-to-land attack groups but argue about who leads what. Both are known for hot tempers, getting names like Howling Mad Smith and Terrible Turner. Captain Carl Moore handles the fight. Holland Smith especially complained about Kelly Turner. He was a whining, complaining type. He would come and sit on my desk and growl about Turner. All I want to do is kill some Japs. Just give me a rifle. I don't want to be a commanding general. And Turner would come and complain about that blankety-blank Smith, couldn't get any cooperation out of him, and so forth. Toll. Moore finds a middle way. Turner leads all sea-to-land groups until Smith goes on land, a setup that stays until the war ends. At first, Nimitz wants to attack the Marshall Islands, but the Japanese spot at Truk is a big danger. Instead, Spruance picks attacking the Gilbert Islands, a Japanese-held British area farther from main Japanese bases. From September 1943, Operation Galvanic aims at islands in the Makin, Abemama, and Tarawa ring reefs, all taken by the Japanese in late 1941. The Japanese mostly leave Abemama, leaving just 25 Marines to watch for U.S. moves, but guard Makin's seaplane spot with 800 troops. Betio in the Tarawa Ring Reef is the key one and best guarded, with a runway and 4,800 Japanese troops, mostly top Japanese Marines. But the island is small, 3.5 kilometers long and 600 meters wide, smaller than New York's Central Park. Its highest spot is 3 meters above sea level. For the guarding Japanese, it stops moving or deep defense, but lets quick troop sending and for almost all weapons to reach anywhere on the island. For the attacking U.S., the enemy are fish in a barrel, but the Japanese will surely fight the beaches, and U.S. firepower may hit friendly troops. After a U.S. raid on Makin in August 1942, Betio leader Rear Admiral Keiji Shibazaki builds big defense works, including 500 bunkers, shore guns, and sea blocks.
The southern side is the best ready, but all beaches are guarded, while 14 reserve light tanks can hit anywhere. Betio might be, per meter, the most heavily guarded spot on Earth, and Shibazaki brags about it. 1 million men could not take Tarawa in 100 years. Wukowitz, 74. U.S. spies find defense works from air and undersea photos, while old residents, mostly British, give land details. But U.S. planes make no low-level spy flights and miss many well-hidden smaller spots. And the Americans don't have any diver groups to check undersea blocks. The 5th Amphibious Corps' 2nd Marine and 27th Infantry Divisions will hit Betio and Makin on November 20, helped by Task Force 58's ships and carrier planes. On Betio, Planner Colonel David Shoup picks 3 landing beaches on the northern lagoon side. Landing vehicles tracked, or LVTs, first made for moving supplies, will work as attack boats and land Marines right on shore. LVTs carry the first 3 attack waves, while shallow-bottom landing craft carry waves 4 through 10. Old residents tell planners there should be enough water for landing craft to cross an offshore reef. New Zealander Frank Holland, though, warns 2nd Marine Division leader Julian Smith the attack date may match a rare super low tide, but others say no. Smith warns his officers but does not change the date. At 5 a.m. on November 20, U.S. ships, including 3 battleships, open fire on Betio with a 3-hour barrage. This is much less than the multi-day barrage Smith asked for, and things right away go bad. When the attack command ship, battleship USS Maryland, fires its first round, the Shakes knock out its quickly set communication gear. Teamwork with plane strikes is also weak. But to the waiting Marines, it is an amazing show, and trust is high. Fires burned from one end of Betio to the other. As I watched the destruction, I couldn't help thinking, how would anybody live through that? Wukowitz 103. Although U.S. ships knock out bigger Japanese spots, smaller ones last. Some shells bounce off the island, while up to 25% of the 1,500 shells fired may miss it fully. Japanese warrant officer Kiyoshi Ota is on the getting end. This bombardment was violent beyond expression, a frightening and horrifying experience. It went on and on without ceasing. My position received a direct hit, but none of us were wounded. We were only buried by sand, which we quickly dug away. I still marvel that so many of us escaped with our lives during this period when heavy shells were falling on the island like rain. Wukowitz 104. At the same time, empty LVTs pick up men from landing craft at sea, even with hard currents and wrong Japanese counterfire. Delays in lining up give Shibazaki time to move men from the south side. So, U.S. warships are hitting Tarawa hard, but the landings are late. At 9 a.m., after up to 5 hours of waiting, the first LVTs go for the beaches. One landing craft puts a scout sniper group on the long pier, for a time clearing it of Japanese machine guns and snipers. Around 450 meters from the beaches, the tracked LVTs safely cross the reef, surprising the Japanese. We could see the American landing craft coming towards us like dozens of spiders scattering over the surface of the water. One of my men exclaimed, "The god of death has come." Alexander 111. Once the thinly armored LVTs get inside the lagoon, Japanese guards open fire. They're wrong, knocking out only 8 of 87 LVTs in the first waves. But it's scary for Marines expecting little fight.
Reporter Robert Sherrod remembers the way in. We jumped into the little tractor boat and quickly settled on the deck. "Oh God, I'm scared," said the little Marine, a telephone operator. I gritted my teeth and tried to force a smile that would not come. I said, in an effort to be reassuring, "I'm scared too." I never made a more truthful statement in all my life. Sherrod 67. Once the Marines reach the beaches, they take cover at the seawall. The Japanese expected this and aimed the areas with mortars. This pushes the Marines over the wall where Japanese snipers and machine guns shoot them down. At the same time, heavy fire, especially from a spot later called the Pocket and from an offshore shipwreck, pushes LVTs off their first path. Ships and planes clear the shipwreck guards, but other Japanese swim out and take the spots again. Many Marines group up around the safer cover of the pier and only make a very small beachhead. Wet radios, officer losses, and repeating communication issues mean U.S. leaders lack spot knowledge. But the first wave's losses are okay. When the fourth wave's landing craft near the beach, they find a bad thing. D-Day does match a strange low tide, so the landing craft can't pass the reef. Some troops move to LVTs, but many walk up to 700 meters to shore. They are easy marks for the Japanese. About 500 yards out, the boat rammed into the reef and everyone was ordered over the side. I leaped out and went into water over my head. Everywhere there were knocked out tractors burning fiercely, men falling all around me, bodies and parts of bodies floating everywhere in the pink water. How anyone reached that shore is still a mystery to me. Half an hour elapsed before I put foot on dry land. Right, Pacific 40. The Japanese wreck more LVTs on return trips, forcing more men to walk ashore. Losses rise a lot, and a bad message from Red 1 finally reaches Julian Smith. Have landed, unusually heavy opposition, casualties 70%, can't hold. Wukovitz 120. By 11 a.m., Marines make weak spots west of Red 1 and on both sides of the pier on Red 2 and 3. Losses are very high on Red 2, including the landing team leader. Colonel Shoup and Major Henry Crow set up a headquarters near the pier, while Major Michael Ryan on Red 1 moves toward the unused Green Beach. Smith sends in the backups, including the 6th Marine Regiment moved from the Macon landing. Only when 7 Sherman tanks land on Red 3 do the Americans make any headway. But by evening, 5,000 Marines are still only 200 to 300 meters inland. The main danger is now a Japanese night counterattack. So late on D-Day, the Marines hold a weak beachhead, and with enemy lines so near, US helping fire risks hitting friends. An ordered Japanese attack could wipe out the beachheads, but the Marines have gotten a lucky break. In the afternoon of D-Day, a destroyer shell kills Shibazaki before he orders a counterattack, so there is no big Japanese night attack. Heavy losses keep going on D+1 as men again walk ashore, and US troops do a 3-part assault. Japanese guards are mixed up and stuck, and Marines can now find their bunkers and slowly clear them with blasts, fire throwers, and tanks. Major Ryan's men take Temacon Point, making a safe landing beach, as other Marines cut the island in two. Shoup, later given the Medal of Honor for his lead, radios to Smith. Casualties many, percentage dead not known, combat efficiency we are winning. Right, Pacific 50. Over the next 2 days, Marines clear Japanese forces from the west, pushing them in the pocket, while others go east. Early on D+3, US Marines destroy a Japanese bonsai attack, killing 320. On the pocket, US bulldozers push dirt into bunkers, covering guards as US troops pour in gasoline and light it. Japanese fight ends on D+3. On Betio, US losses are 1,117 killed and missing, and 2,292 wounded, almost as many losses in 3 days as during the 6-month fight on Guadalcanal. Most losses are in the later waves who walked ashore. Japanese dead number 4,690, 97% of the guard group. The US take 146 prisoners, but only 17 are Japanese troops. The rest are Korean workers. At the same time as the landings on Betio, the US 27th Infantry Division lands on Makin's main island of Budatari, with 6,500 troops greatly outnumbering 800 Japanese. The US Army uses more careful advances to touch before calling in helping fire. Losses are lower, but Marine officer Holland Smith is harsh. He says that Army ways make the fight last longer, let the Japanese dig in and cause more losses, and force help ships to stay near in weak spots for longer. As if to show his point, a Japanese submarine hits the light carrier Liscum Bay off Makin on November 24, killing 687. The high US losses cause talk, especially after newspapers show photos of US dead for the first time in the war. Private Army fights partly play out in open, with MacArthur calling the operation an unnecessary massacre of human lives. Alexander 229. Critics see the attack as a failure even with the win. However, US leaders are impressed by the LVT's skill to drop troops on the beach and hide this win for operation safety reasons. They remind the public that sea-to-land landings are always risky and show the public the truths of Pacific War. A film called With the Marines on Tarawa plays a lot and later wins an Oscar. War bond sales go up, although Marine joining drops 35%. Leaders right away find the operation's weak points. The use of battleships as leader centers, bad waterproofing of gear like radios, too heavy troops in the attack waves, poor watch on tides, no undersea spy or blasts, and issues moving troops onto LVTs at sea that left them at sea too long. Checkers also find weak with the sea bombardment. It did wreck big guns and Japanese talks, but is not enough against bunkers and is badly done. Ships attacked too often with heavy shells, making clouds which hid watching. And air attack. Ships also stop the bombardment too soon, 25 minutes before the first landing, which gives the guards time to regroup. Officers also note a bad job by planes, which often hit at random, as one pilot later says, "I'm reluctant to say I was involved in the so-called air support for the landing at Tarawa, for it was pretty sorry. We didn't really know what we were doing." Alexander 105. So Tarawa is a very flawed American win, and the lessons must be learned fast. In early 1944, Central Pacific leaders want to take Kwajalein and Eniwetok ring reefs in the Marshall Islands to use as a front base and replace Pearl Harbor. U.S. forces lose no time making fixes. The U.S. makes more LVTs, including better types with factory-set armor, turret guns, and back ramps. Troops will now start the attack in LVTs and drop the hard ship-to-ship move. Special underwater demolition teams will do spy and clear blocks, while guns will be based on smaller islands offshore of the main goal. Shermans replace the lighter Stuart tanks, and there are better fire-thrower weapons, including tank set types. Smaller ships with special talk gear will take over a lead role, and landing troops get better radios. Pre-landing hits will now be multi-day, as first asked. This means more guards, anti-air and anti-sub boats to protect the hitting fleet. And between November 1943 and January 1944, the U.S. Navy's Task Force 58 almost doubles in size. Destroyers and rocket ships will do more of the barrage, which will go right up to the moment troops land. Planes and ships will also attack together, instead of one after the other.
These fixes work at the Marshall Island landings on January 34, 1944. U.S. Marines land on the islands of Ro Namur to light first fight. The pre-landing hit is much better, with a Navy report saying it stops 50 to 75% of the 2,000-strong guard group. Japanese fight is harder on Namur, but stops on the second day. U.S. ships hit Kwajalein even more strongly, with 15,000 tons of blasts hitting the 2,000 Japanese guards in 72 hours. An officer on Turner's main ship says, "Never in the history of human conflict has so much been thrown by so many at so few." Toll. U.S. Army troops land on Kwajalein's eastern side to light fight and again use slower, step-by-step ways. This gives the Japanese time to add to the west, where the fight slows down. Still, air hits and new hits clear the guards by D+4. Marine leader Holland Smith stays not impressed. "I could see no reason why this division, with ample forces ashore, well covered by land-based artillery and receiving tremendous naval and air support, could not take the island quicker." Toll. But good landings speed up plans for Eniwetok. It's a great anchor spot but dangerously near Japanese-held Truk. While U.S. carrier planes and land-based bombers hold down Truk, a 10,000-strong Marine Army group lands on the Eniwetok, Engebi, and Perry Islands in late February. The attacks followed the new teaching, and even though fight flows down amongst well-hidden trenches, U.S. troops take all islands within 3 days. The Marshall Island fights do not go fully right. Some LVTs have trouble getting ashore, Marine Army teamwork stays tense, and set Japanese fight causes losses, with around 920 U.S. killed and missing and 2,340 wounded to take all the islands. 11,180 Japanese troops are killed, almost all of the attacked islands' guard groups. Still, there is no repeat of the Tarawa killing, and the win seems to back Nimitz's Central Pacific plan. The operations also show Japanese weak spots. Major Japanese ships leave from Truk before the attack, but Operation Hailstone mostly wrecks it from the air. Despite earlier worries, skipped Japanese bases never become a big danger to U.S. back areas. Also, even though Japanese leaders order a sea counterattack at Tarawa, nothing really happens. The Japanese expect these outposts to fall and want to save what sea power stays for a key fight closer to Japan. Some watchers say that the time between Tarawa and Kwajalein and Eniwetok acted as a key turning point in the Pacific War. As naval helper Roger Bond noted, "I think that for anyone that participated in the war, there were actually two wars. If you went out to the Pacific after, let's say, January of 1944, you had a completely different experience and viewpoint than those before, because it really was two different operations." Toll. This is partly due to a change in teaching, but also to the huge rise in US Army power in the area. After Eniwetok, Admiral Harry Hill said on the ready LVTs and helping arms, "At Eniwetok, I felt like a millionaire, but at Tarawa, I was a pauper." Toll. Importantly, after years of US stories showing the Japanese as race worse and tries by the leaders to hide the people from war, US troops and normal folks now get that the Japanese are a dangerous enemy. A December 1943 New York Times piece reminded its readers, "We must steel ourselves now to pay that price." Toll. But that does not mean the US is near win. They are still far from Japan, the Japanese Navy is a big danger, and lead issues stay. Even though Holland Smith and Turner fixed their link, Smith still picks on Army coworkers. Also, it's now clear some islands can be skipped, so there are more hot talks about which ones need taking. The Japanese also answer. They move from beach guard toward making a wearing down plan meant to drain US forces in costly island fights. By early 1944, the US have fixed their sea-to-land operations after Tarawa, but bloodier island fights wait. To learn more about the Second World War on the Pacific, check out our past videos on Saipan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, or the Battle of Manila. As usual, you can find all the sources for this video in the description below. If you are watching this video on Patreon or Nebula, thank you so much for the help. We couldn't do it without you. This is a production of Epic Doc, the only history channel that blankety blank